There are plenty of good reasons to start PC gaming. The kind, welcoming community, the ease of access, and so on. One of the biggest attractors for many is the prospect of high frame rate gaming. Although the new GPU market mainly caters to this need for at least 60 FPS in the majority of games, in 2021 this new GPU market isn't... it doesn't exist. Fret not, however. The used market is full of very capable graphics cards that can still give new PC gamers a 60 FPS experience. Though in this case, not without sacrifice. I recently looked at the AMD Radeon RX 460 in my full Tales from the Scalper Pandemic video. This card is probably the cheapest Radeon on the used market in the second half of 2021 that's still supported with new driver updates, and I concluded that it's an acceptable replacement for the aging R9 270 and its many variants, and even matches the R9 280 in some games. What I didn't do, however, is take the time to see if some of the more demanding games could be tweaked to run at 60 FPS. In this brief video, I'll be looking back at 5 titles that failed to hit the magic 60 the first time round, and do whatever it takes to get them across the line, even if it means dropping quality settings and resolution until my eyes bleed. To start off, I have to put my hands up to this one. I should have known that nobody would want to play Apex Legends at sub 60 frame rates, but for me this style of game is begging for high resolutions. In my previous video, 1080 low was only sufficient for 52 FPS. I assume that dropping to 1600 by 900 will be all that's necessary to obtain a 60 FPS average, but this video isn't 60 FPS or take the easiest compromise. So I did that thing that I said I wouldn't do in a video that wasn't about overclocking. I overclocked the card. In fact, I overclocked the CPU and the RAM while I was at it. I didn't spend a whole lot of time experimenting to get the best results. I just pushed the CPU multiplier to 42, and when it wasn't stable at auto, I turned the voltage up to 1.35. I used the DDR4 4000 RAM I picked up recently for an APU video, and finally I played with the sliders in MSI Afterburner while Combustor was running, and managed to add 50 MHz to the GPU core and 150 MHz to the VRAM without any drama. The results were actually pretty mind-blowing. In the 9 minutes I managed to play before getting absolutely annihilated, I saw an average of 82 FPS with lows just barely below 60 without dropping from 1920 by 1080. Last time I looked at Horizon Zero Dawn on the RX 460, it was running in the mid-40s at 720 original settings. I presumed it wouldn't take much to push this one over the line to 60. Well, at stock clocks, it seemed that something about the PC was holding things back. Regardless of how low I went, even down to the lowest resolution and 50% scaling, I still couldn't quite manage to reach that 60 FPS average. So once more I reached for my overclocking hat, and with RAM, CPU and GPU all pushed up to the edge of my comfort zone, the game finally started playing ball. Now I only had to drop as far as 80% of 720 with the performance quality preset to reach the hallowed 60. Well, okay, that's still a pretty big drop, and the game does look like someone smeared Vaseline over a PS2 game, but it's playable at least. This vision of loveliness is Cyberpunk 2077, running at 1280 by 720 with 50% resolution scaling and low quality settings, and we are indeed hitting a 60 FPS average. As is usual with Cyberpunk, driving gameplay runs a bit slower, dipping into the 40s and 50s, but on-foot sections can actually climb into the 70s. I can't remember which perk or implant it is that highlights enemies in combat, but if you're playing at these settings, you're definitely going to want to get it. Otherwise, combat's going to be a bit of a pain in the ass. Ubisoft games have a reputation for being poorly optimised on PC, so you might not expect a good result in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. My original test at 1080 medium came back with a score of 33, and honestly that's probably good enough for me in this style of game, but settling for 30 isn't going to cut it in this video. Dropping the resolution scaler to 60% and the quality setting to low gets us over the line with an average of 61. I also pushed textures up to medium. Can you tell? Watch Dogs Legion is another Ubisoft title with a history of poor performance. Dropping the scaling to 30% might seem a bit excessive, but as this game calculates scaling by area instead of linearly, this equates to a resolution of 1051 by 591. With quality set to low, it's possible to obtain that coveted 60 FPS average, with the benchmark showing an average of 61. As you can see from the footage, if you initiate massive gunfights with dozens of enemies and cars on screen at once, this can dip well into the 40s, but I'm led to believe this isn't how you're supposed to play the game. So this might not have been the follow-up video you were expecting. If you watched my previous RX 460 test, I said that I'd consider trying to flash the BIOS on my card and try and unlock the extra shading units that AMD disabled from the factory. It seems that my information on this was woefully out of date, as some years ago AMD made this essentially impossible without jumping through some major hoops, and I decided life was too short to spend messing around with drivers. So I hope this video makes up for that in some way, even if it's not quite what I had planned. Did I have a point? A dramatic conclusion to make? No, I don't think I did. Thanks for watching, kindly do the usual YouTube things if you feel so inclined, and I'll see you next time.